I wanted to talk to you guys about the nightclub shooting in Orlando. I did find out that it was at a nightclub called Pulse or Pulse Orlando. I'm hearing both. Obviously, the logo's in the side over here from one photo I found online. Um, I'm getting a bunch of different details. One said the family of the shooter said that he had actually very much hated homosexuals. The police are trying to say that he somehow or another converted to the Islamic State and became a groupthink terrorist, on the phone, basically aligned himself with the Islamic State on the phone. But the family is saying, he wasn't into that. But, and honestly, I'm really starting to think this guy, along with many of the other shooters, are or have been Manchurian candidates. If you listen to the majority of the cases, it seems like they answer their phones or something almost right before the shooting takes place. So even if they're motivated enough to have the guns on sight, it's the phone call that pulses whatever it pulses probably to basically send them off their edge. And anyways, I wanted to bring this to you because I'm finding a bunch of different sources here, and you're not gonna be able to see what I'm seeing because I have this loaded live, and you'll be able to see the New York Times shooting night Orlando. Um, so that is a big deal. I know they're not releasing the name of the nightclub because they don't want it to hurt the franchise or the organization. Another big thing I'm going to mention real quick is that this it was a nightclub and it did serve alcohol, right? Okay. Well, any place with a bar generally has at least one firearm. You're telling me there wasn't one undercover police officer? None of the guys tending bar that night had a firearm on them? Are you telling me that in the gay communities, the undercover cops don't patrol these bars and stuff the way they would in the straight communities and stuff? I can't believe at the moment. So I'm trying to bring you this here. Um, this outrageous situation. They're calling this probably the worst situation since 9/11. I believe the official numbers on the theater shooting was 56. So I don't think this was the worst. I did say that the FBI was supposedly watching this guy, but in most of those cases, I wonder if they're not, like, I hate to say it, but if you're watching somebody and you think they're getting ready to do something, you need to make an arrest. That's just the situation. I mean, especially if you can prevent this with a night to south or something, fine. Because this was an act of terrorism. I agree with that completely. This was an absolute act of terrorism. Um, and being an act of terrorism and an act of hate crime, you kind of wonder what was going on. That not one single uh, person in there had a firearm that returned fire. Not one person supposedly had a firearm. I thought it was pretty much standard law across the United States that if you have alcohol containers open, that there would be firearms, near the bar. Everybody was like, oh, it's because they were gay. They didn't believe in it. You telling me that not one veteran there had a firearm, not one CPL carrier, not one uh, Not one single undercover cop that had been homosexual was there? Or was this a night where literally all of those people just so happened to actually be at a point where nobody was carrying a firearm that night? I mean, could it have been arranged that much? I highly doubt it. Not one firearm. Usually guys tend in bar have a shotgun that's loaded, at least with something. Shoot rubber bullets at him. What the hell difference does it make? I don't know, folks. This was a tragedy in America. I understand that. But it's just sad that so many people have to lose their lives because even in the gay communities, people believe that guns are not necessary. Yes, they are. There's two ways you fight extremism: offensive and defensive. Two ways you fight hate: offensive and defensive. And in most cases, that means with the use of firearms, whether you never use them or you do. You telling me that in a city like Orlando, that this entire nightclub was allowed to operate, the photos over here, without one person in the ownership in the company that didn't have an active CPL? Not one undercover cop, not one person tending bar that night? I don't know, guys. It just seems too clean. I mean, all right, so this is what I'm basically finding. I have several sources here. Orlando nightclub kills 50, police say, New York Times. You'll see this after I get done and this gets loaded and the sources get put on. The gunman's name was Omar Mateen, 29, American citizen living in Fort Pierce, Florida, said. Local and DHS officials told members of Congress the gunman made the 9/11 call shortly before the attacks and swore allegiance to the Islamic State group. I don't know, that can be faked. Unless somebody overheard it, that can easily be faked. Unless they did a Manchurian Candidate thing where, he got a phone call and then, he picked it up and then he dialed afterward and he, did this or did that. And then he dialed 911 and said it. So I'm getting this. This is the third or fourth paragraph down in the New York Times. The killer stormed the Pulse nightclub armed with an AR-15 and supposedly a pistol. While more than 300 people were inside, dancing, drinking. And not one of them, ladies and gentlemen, supposedly had a gun, oddly enough, or didn't use them. I kind of find that hard to believe, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and Mr. Martin shot about 1/3 of the people in the nightclub, mowing down patrons of hundreds of people. So Mr. Martin holed up inside dozens of people, effectively held hostage, some of them hiding in restrooms, frantically calling for help. About 5 a.m. when police SWAT team in an armored vehicle, so probably LRAP or MRAP, showed up, used stun grenades to basically gain entry into the building and killed him. There was supposedly an officer who was wounded. Oddly enough, not in a vest, but in a Kevlar helmet. So you won't hear this, but this actually supposedly happened. So there's a lot of this going on, folks. Another source I have says here, there was something on here about the FBI guy that was on scene. He said something, and it was a little bit out of the ordinary. I'll have to find it later. But they're talking a lot about Police Chief John Mina of Orlando and how he basically talked about how the determination to shoot and kill the person, Matina, whatever his name is, the guy that was the gunman, was made after the shot was made to the SWAT team guy's helmet, and they had to basically, from what I understand, drag off the SWAT team guy. So that's when it was decided. I'm suspecting, for at least from the information here, that lethal force was now necessary to take this guy down. And they're basically calling this worse than the Virginia Tech incident in 2007 when 32 people were killed. I imagine there to be at least 50 some people here plus to have died already, and we just haven't heard. Um, so, his father said this had nothing to do with religion or the Islamic State, but the government basically is saying that it had to, that he made the phone call, did this, did that. And this is the situation here. I'm going to give you a bunch of sources and you can go through them. Just look in the description.